It's time to talk about the most recent book I finished reading, which is Blackwater Val by William Gorman. It's important to note, to start off with the name, Blackwater Val isn't, Val is not used as in the name Valerie, or whatever. It's the setting of the book, short for Valley. So it's set in a small town known as Blackwater Val. Now, this is a horror novel, obviously. I picked it up a few months back when they advertised on the horror show with Brian Keene. And when I checked the price, it was only 99 cents at the time, because I guess they were having a sale, because it was just released, I think. Now, this is one of those horror novels about a small town that, it gets menaced by an ancient evil, and people have to try and stop it. There's a bajillion books like it. But this one I thought was actually fairly good. Why don't I read to you a little bit from the first chapter so you can get a sense of the book.
Because of the skunk, they were marked from the beginning. It had run out into the highway so suddenly that Richard Franklin had in turn run over it before he had ever had a chance to brake. Startled, he jerked his foot off the gas pedal, feeling first the resistance, and next the sickening give beneath his Bridgestone Firestones. And then the smell had hit. Richard and Katie glanced at each other, noses wrinkling. Franklin had resumed his speed, trying to get away from the invisible, pungent wave as fast as he could. But it was already too late. With nothing else that could be done, really, he continued to cruise, approaching an overpass and keying up the power windows on the Chevy Blazer. He shook his head, teeth clenched grimly at the irony of it, letting out a disheartened sigh. "You okay?" he asked his only daughter. Katie nodded, looking down at her activity books. "Yes," she said. "What was that, Daddy?" She pulled a magenta crown with slow precision from its box. "Dead skunk laying in the highway, hon," he lied. "Smells bad, huh?" "A little." Richard followed U.S. Route 20 along with the other traffic going west. He noticed it had begun to rain, so he clicked on the wipers. In the overcast distance, he saw an exit sign coming up fast. Irene exit 1C. Blackwater Val, 1/4 mile. Rockford, 3/4 mile. He changed lanes and watched for the ramps, trying to breathe solely through his mouth, letting the first exit sail by. Some kind of commotion drew his gaze down off the overpass to the ground beneath them, and to the right, he saw 2 county sheriff's cruisers and an ambulance, their lights strobing dreamlike, and a television news van with its broadcast antenna extended. From this, a female reporter loped like a hyena, the assistant beside her, trying to tweak her hair and makeup on the run, while brandishing an umbrella above them like some kind of Michael Jackson crony. Straight barricades were already in place, flares being thrown down. Below, in the center of all this buzz, was what appeared to be a partial section of the secondary artery that had seemingly caved in, creating a huge sinkhole where the road had been. Richard strained to see and caught a brief glimpse, insanely, of what looked like human bones down inside the collapsed pit, amongst the earth and broken fragments of blacktop, strewn, muddied bones and a darkened skull or two, or...
Okay, so there's not really much happening there except running over a skunk and seeing a strange pit full of dead bodies, which is an old plague pit, not a recent murder site or anything. But there's one thing that will probably stand out as a bit strange to you, and that is the reference to referring to a newspaper reporter's entourage as being like Michael Jackson or something, which seemed odd to me too at the time. But a few chapters later, when it turns out that the main character there encounters goes to his in-laws' house and sees their old CRT TV, that's the old ones with the tube and all that crap. He thinks about how he's surprised it's still working in 2000, in the beginning of the new millennium, and that's when you realize this book is set 16 years ago, despite the fact that it was just published this year. With that Michael Jackson reference, I almost can't help but wonder if it was originally started 16 years ago, because that's really an odd reference to make when he's been dead for years and is no longer really as relevant anymore. But anyway, that's just an odd thing. It's not actually something against the story. There are some things I do have against it, but first, I'll tell you the plot. As you can see from the reading, it's about a father and daughter who are heading to Blackwater Val. This was the old hometown of the father and his wife, who is unfortunately dead. So they are bringing her ashes back home to scatter there because that's her will. And she has, of course, been murdered recently. And not surprisingly, it turns out that the whole murder was part of a plot to bring the father and daughter to the small town because the daughter has strange supernatural powers and the ancient evil force wants her there so it can use her supernatural powers for its evil ends. And, it's the kind of thing you see. So it's basically a combination of supernatural kid horror story with ancient evil trying to destroy a small town horror story. Basically. It's a pretty good one, too. I found this one to be a very well-written story with some really great characters in it that I really liked, and it's the sort of thing that I had a heck of a time putting the book down. I mean, I could have just kept on reading it if it wasn't for the fact that I was reading it when I was at work and have to put it down every time a customer comes up. Don't say my boss, because I'm not supposed to be reading at work. Besides those two characters, there's also the bad guy, who is certainly an interesting villain. You'll find out fairly quickly who it is, but I'm not going to spoil it for you. And there's a sinister Native American character in it who's important and is, one of the minor bad guys. And the guy's in-laws are major characters, and they're certainly interesting. And like I said, I just really like the story, but I did have one major problem with it, which is the only thing really keeping me from giving it a full 5 gas masks, and that's Islamophobia. This book has one character in it who is a Muslim, who is a foreign exchange student staying with one of the minor characters. And he gets his own little plot line, but it's a completely unimportant, pointless plot line that doesn't contribute at all to the narrative in any way. And basically, he has gotten a hold of a hand grenade and decided he wants to blow up the church with it so he can go to the afterlife and get a bunch of virgins because he's a Muslim, which means he's a terrorist, apparently. Yeah, I mean, you can't help but think that having a book like this with a Muslim character, and only one Muslim character in the whole book, and have him be a terrorist for no reason. I mean, he's not really given any decent motivation for wanting to be a terrorist, and it's certainly no plot motivation for him to be a terrorist, because the fact that he wants to blow people up doesn't play off at all. He gets, the actual evil villains don't want him blowing up the church, because that will disrupt their plans, so they get rid of him before he can do it, and he just disappears from the plot. The hand grenade doesn't play any part in the plot. Basically, if they would have written him out altogether, the book would have turned out exactly the same thing. So basically, it's like the author put in a Muslim character as a terrorist just to have a Muslim terrorist in the plot. Which, that comes across as a little bit racist. I don't know if it was intentional or not, but it's there, and I feel the need to mention it because this is my review, and I'll say what I think. And it's especially a bit strange since this story is set in 2000, so it's pre-9/11, so having a Muslim terrorist try and do an attack on American soil seems even stranger than it would today. I don't know, but even so, with that, I still think this is a very well-written book, and unless you're overly sensitive about that sort of thing, you'd probably still enjoy it if you like horror. So I will still give this 4 gas masks, because I think it's a really good book, despite that. And that's it for this review, and I will probably have another one up tomorrow, because I'm finally just about finished with a book called The Role-Playing Society, which is a collection of scholarly essays on how role-playing games have affected society. Not really the sort of thing I usually read, but I was stupid enough to request a review copy of it, so I have to do a review of it. You can see that tomorrow, or probably you won't, because I don't think anybody who's likely to be watching my channel will really care, but you'll be there, and I'll be here, and you'll be, I don't know, playing No Man's Sky or something. Or maybe Pokemon Go. Or if you're smart, reading a good book. Until then, goodbye.
If you like this video, please click subscribe or watch some of my older videos. If you think the book I reviewed sounds interesting, buy a copy. There are always links to the Amazon store in the description for this book and any other books I mentioned. If you have any suggestions on other books I could read, or any other comments, queries, insults, or anything else you want to say, please feel free to mention it in the comments section.